In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern. We do have multiple major storms on the way for the central and eastern states, which is a little bit surprising. The west, we are still going to see some, but they've already been having them. It's the central and eastern states where this is kind of a new thing, as we've had a quieter month, even 2 months for some folks. We do have some tropical concerns as well across some of the central and in western Caribbean heading into the Gulf that we need to discuss, and it could actually be quite major. So some interesting solutions coming out about that storm. And we, of course, have that very major cold air that is on the way that we've been predicting for over a week now, which is looking now a lot more likely than it even was days ago. So let's just go ahead and discuss all of these things. I want to take us straight towards tomorrow. Obviously, we've seen this video is out a little bit late, so we're going to be taking a look at tomorrow afternoon on Thursday, November 14th. We're getting awfully close to Thanksgiving, or even the halfway mark of November, which is crazy. And we see a whole lot of activity here in the east. First things first, there isn't really a low, but we're going to see some low pressure swing underneath the Carolinas here and move up the coast a little bit, where we will get some pretty significant rainfall for this corridor, which is really, outside of these areas impacted by Helene down here, is really the areas that need it the most here in the kind of like the mid-Atlantic and southern northeast areas like Pennsylvania, Maryland, DC, New Jersey. We're going to see quite a bit of rainfall for these areas, and even perhaps snowfall for some of these mountainous areas in West Virginia. Usually they're some of the first folks to get snowfall in the year. And interestingly enough, or maybe not that shockingly, they're seeing some of the first snowfall in the eastern states here this season. We do see snowfall out west as well, especially for the Northwest Cascades here. Northern Rockies all seeing snowfall. We even have a low here across areas of kind of like central Canada. As we keep going, I want to take us straight towards Friday. We should look at overnight. This is when we see that low forming off the coast of North Carolina here. A little weaker on this GFS model. The European model wants to make it a little stronger. Should be somewhere between 1,000 and 2 millibars, and maybe as low as 995, something in between there. And that's a pretty big difference. 995 would make probably quite a bit more rainfall in this area, while the 1,001 would still bring 1 or 2 inches to a lot of folks, but maybe not as widespread or maybe not even as high of amounts. Right now, we don't see any signs of seriously cold air in the east. We see a little bit of a trough, and this is bringing some cooler temperatures. Today in Virginia felt a lot more like a December day, perhaps. So we were dealing with mostly 50s, which is quite cool for this early in November. But again, nothing, earth-shattering by any means. We still see some snowfall out west. I want to take us towards the afternoon here of Friday, and we do see the Sierra Nevada and some of the Rockies here getting in on some snowfall. Overall, the jet stream is troughing in the west, ridging for a lot of the central states, and again, a little bit of a slight trough here in the east, where we see some cooler temperatures for most of these eastern areas, but not cold, not outright cold. We do have another nor'easter nearby Maine, and this is bringing some mixed bag of precipitation to Maine and eastern Canada. Some areas mixing in with some ice or snow, perhaps. Shouldn't really accumulate, but we could see some flakes flying for some of these areas for the day on Friday, November 15th. Here is Saturday, November 16th, and what we're seeing by this point is still a bit of a trough in the west and a ridge overall in the east here. Again, slightly descending towards the east, so it should be a little cooler the further east you go. Nothing too crazy. It's overall a ridge in the east, though. Not too much to discuss here. There is some snow showers for the northern plains, a lot of the Rockies, and still some of eastern Canada and Maine there. I want to just continue on because there isn't too much to discuss here. Here is Sunday on November 17th. We see the Cascades and Northern Rockies dealing with heavier snowfall, 986 millibar low pressure center over the Canadian Rockies, and this is aiding and bringing heavier snowfall to these areas. We do have some precipitation down here for the southwest, and we do have a stronger low here north of the Great Lakes, which is typically what's been bringing our cooler air to the east. So let's see what happens by Monday. And we get another kind of similar cool down to the one we're under right now. Again, nothing earth-shattering. Let's just work our way from west to east, though. We'll discuss that in a second. We do see the Northwest still dealing with precipitation and primarily snowfall here for the mountainous areas. very intense there. We do have a very strong low over Kansas here with a dragging cold front, a little bit of a warm front up to the north, and this should bring some chance of severe weather for this corridor. Areas like Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, we're going to be on high alert for more fall time severe weather there. Your jet stream overall is again descending towards the east, so when we see this kind of descending pattern, you expect further east you go, cooler temperatures as opposed to these more Midwest areas and central areas. Let's take a look here at Tuesday on November 19th. And we really see this severe weather potentially flare up around the overnight hours of Monday into Tuesday, 18th into 19th here. We'd be watching Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, maybe even Iowa, Illinois here. So some severe weather could be possible. Some tropical concerns here north of the Yucatan Peninsula. And overall, the jet stream is again descending towards the east, ridging primarily over these Midwest areas. But a big trough over the west still, and a big ridge here just to the east of this low. As we move towards Tuesday afternoon, we see a couple of interesting things happening. 992 here over Iowa, snowfall on the western end for states like Minnesota, the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Iowa perhaps. Very cool air here for the northern plains, as well as the Northwest and Rockies overall, but we do see this warm push for the Southwest coast, and this is the beginning of what's going to bring the colder air eastward. Right now we're seeing warm air kind of surge up the eastern states, just like this, but everything should move eastward because of what's happening in the west here. Again, tropical concerns here, the overall consensus is that Florida could be the spot to get hit with the current estimates of track, and that's what we see happen here. This is Wednesday afternoon, tropical cyclone over Florida. Again, nothing crazy on this particular model, but we have seen some models suggesting a pretty major tropical cyclone could be possible. Look at your jet stream simultaneously. Massive trough heading eastward. Still, we have this warm up for the east right here, and cold air funneling in between, with a major Midwest snowstorm right there. Low over Wisconsin, snowfall over Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, perhaps some of Kansas here, Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, and parts of south central Canada, seeing heavy snowfall with this very cold air. That could be a major snow system that we need to discuss today. Looks very La Nina-like. Also, look at all this high pressure in this area as well as warmer air. Again, everything should continue to move eastward. Let's take a look at the morning hours of Thursday. What we see, and we oftentimes see this when we have this low over here in the Great Lakes, we see some energy able to transfer offshore. We get a kind of secondary low offshore, and we get some West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New York snowfall perhaps. These models trending at that. More rainfall for the Mid-Atlantic as well and other areas. And everything's kind of moving eastward. By the afternoon, we have a full-blown ridge in the west, trough in the east pattern right here. A little bit of an inversion, so expect that low to kind of funnel into that. But we have cold air spreading throughout all of these areas here in much of the central and eastern states. Plenty of snowfall throughout the Great Lakes, Midwest, and Ohio Valley here, with this low still overhead nearby eastern Wisconsin. As we keep going towards Friday afternoon, what we see is we still have this really deep cold air mass here with some low pressure bringing snow showers around for Canada and the United States here in general. But we have kind of this second core of it, and this looks to be moving down. So we'll have to see if we get kind of a resurgence after this. Big time warm and dry air out west, a warm bubble out here, really causing all of this cold to have to go eastward. Let's see what happens Saturday. And yeah, it recycles. We see another very cold air mass over the Great Lakes there. A strong low just to the north of that. We are seeing widespread snow showers throughout portions of Canada, the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley as well, some of the upper Midwest. Sunday, we see that kind of move off to the east. Everything's flattening up, but it's still way colder. Kind of the separation in the freezing temperature is kind of at the mid portion of the United States, whereas it's been up in Canada up here. So we are seeing, probably like 1,000+ miles difference here as far as where that really cold air is at. So big time game changer here. We also see a lot of energy coming from the south here. This could be interesting for these areas. We're going to have to watch that very closely when we have this energy coming from the Gulf, plus cold enough air up here to the north, we could see something try to come together. The Rockies seeing snow showers as well by Monday. Not too surprising there, but look at Tuesday afternoon. Low developing right by the Mississippi River along Tennessee and Kentucky. We have colder air behind it, even more so than in front of it. So we're kind of watching these areas in here for potential snowfall. We're seeing it start out for Kansas, Missouri, Illinois. We see by Wednesday, this kind of goes a little flatter than expected. We see it kind of heading out here. And we see overall snowfall for New England, the Northeast. And look, this isn't too far-fetched. This is pretty far out, so the specifics can change a lot. But this is something that happens in the very late fall like this, heading into the early winter. And we're needing to discuss this in a very serious tone now. We're not in October anymore. We're not in September. We are in late November. Might as well be December, and we know what happens this time of year. Snowfall can happen. Is it as snowy as January and February? Absolutely not. But it's getting there. It is getting towards where these things are very, very possible and something that we need to watch really closely. Another key factor is we do have cold in the west, but it's not taking over. It's not a mega trough in the west. And we're seeing this cold able to spill over this warm air mass into the east. And that's what's allowing for this energy to meet up with that cold and bring potential snow to some folks. Thursday here, this trough is slightly lifting off by this point, but look what's behind it. We still have very warm air here in the southwest. We have more cold air supercharging up here in the west, and kind of I expect it to fill in the gap and move eastward again if this warm air mass is still set up over the southwest. So that is why I talk about this so much. It's just a block. It's a wall, and it forces that cold air to have to go somewhere else. It can't move straight into this. It's a very strong area of warmth. It has to move around, and that's what causes our big time cooldowns in the east. And we see it kind of heading that way here by Friday on the 29th. Another low perhaps up here north of the Great Lakes, bringing some snowfall, and cold air wanting to move with it, likely down further south into the east again. We have warm air here. If that stays in place, cold air should be repetitively moving towards the east. So all of a sudden, we could be looking at cold from the midway point of the month all the way through the end for the most part, which would bring a very cold couple of weeks at least. Could get interesting here. Total precipitation, we still see very large amounts for a lot of the west. Plains and Midwest looking great. In this area, I'm the happiest about. These areas need the rainfall a lot, and we're seeing a whole lot move in. So a lot of good news here. When we look at the anomalies, we're near average to above average in most of these areas. We're above average throughout a lot of these plains into the Midwest, and we're below average for a lot of the Northwest, despite them seeing quite a bit of precipitation. So when we see these ridges move up like this, and I'll kind of draw what that jet stream looks like this. You see those storms take that same track too. So none of them are moving onshore to the west coast here in any of these areas really. We're seeing them move over. We're seeing them move over that area, and that's why we're seeing more dry than what we've seen, and that's why we're seeing a lot of precipitation in these areas here, because this moves down and it swings around either there, or it moves down and swings around here. That's what we're seeing as far as the storm track. I'm realizing how many arrows there is here. Like, imagine if somebody just looked at this without hearing me talk. It'd be absolutely crazy. Here's the snowfall. And again, a lot more plausible, because in our previous model runs, we saw these areas getting some snowfall. We've seen this shift north into a much more realistic territory. Let's start out in the west, though. The Rockies, Cascades, and Sierra Nevada seeing snowfall. It's overall good news. I mean, the only area seeing a lot is going to be these northern Rockies and kind of Cascades. Everywhere else is probably under 2 feet over the next 15 days. We do see large amounts in here for the upper Midwest and south central areas of Canada. That could be a foot, 2 feet, even 3 feet for some spots. This could be a big time couple of snow events. And then we get this interesting one kind of moving through this area here. This could be a early season snowstorm for some of these higher elevation and more northern areas in the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We'll have to watch and see. You know, it's pretty far out. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but we're not moving. This isn't something that I would have to tell you like, hey, this doesn't normally happen, because it kind of does sometimes. So we're moving into a lot more of like a plausible direction with the snowfall, which I like to see from the models. This is giving us like some historical backing, I guess, to the claims that these models are making, which is a better sign. As we take a look here, at the temperature pattern, we see we're a little cooler along the east, like I said. We're looking at, 5-10 degrees below normal for the most part. And we see this kind of last for quite a while. We do warm up, especially Sunday, Monday here, Tuesday. But this is when that big cold shot comes in. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And look, again, this warm bubble is wanting to sit tight. And this could be on the way for the east too. So all of a sudden we could see weeks of cold, like I mentioned. And, there is a couple of warm spots in between there at times, but when you look at the overall picture of that 1 or 2 week period, it's going to be blue, green, and maybe even purple. So we're seeing substantial cold for that long of a period if this verifies. So a huge, huge flip in the upper atmosphere as far as the pattern. Here's what we need to talk about, our tropical concerns. We do have a low trying to develop down here. It kind of has already. Now, as of today, obviously, we see this moving over the Yucatan Peninsula and then curving likely back towards Florida here. This would hinder development a lot, this land interaction. This would be great news. And we likely wouldn't see too strong of a system out of it. But yesterday, what we saw was a lot more of this through what I call the sweet spot between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba. And that would be a much worst case scenario. So we want to hope that it kind of stays looking like a Yucatan Peninsula strike, because it won't be too strong likely by the time it hits them, and it won't be able to develop as much. If it goes through this spot here, I should say this spot here, it can kind of freely develop, and we could even be looking at a hurricane if we see this track. So we have to hope that they continue to look this way that they look today. That would be great news. Here's the official cone forecast from the National Hurricane Center, and really they have this one becoming a tropical storm by Saturday at 1 p.m., staying that way, kind of hovering around Central America, and then maybe hitting the Yucatan Peninsula by Monday. Again, it doesn't go far enough, but likely this would enter the Gulf and maybe move towards Florida no matter what it is. Even if it's not a tropical system anymore, that is where those clouds and storms would head. So we'll be watching this closely. I think that this one is slightly concerning, and we'll be tracking it very closely for you guys. But thankfully, we have a lot of time to go before that's a concern. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, as we do upload every single day. For the most part, I do miss a couple. Be sure to hit that bell icon so you never miss a notification. You can watch every day with us. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.